Let me just share with you what is it that you can expect and why we have gathered here. One is the question that we need to ask from ourselves is why have you gathered here? What is it that you're looking for? When it's a platform to discuss issues and the critical issues which are really important for today's growth, when we are staying in one of the fastest growing economy in the world, it's a question that I need to ask from myself, why am I here? And why are we discussing this in competitive forum, right? What you can expect from here is some really phenomenal keynote speeches from the likes of, we have already heard Mr. Enright, from the likes of Mr. Rajiv Bajaj, Mr. Raja Chaudhary, Ms. Sangeeta Reddy, Mr. Michael Potter himself, and a few really thought-provoking discussions, some panel discussions around the current state of India when it comes to manufacturing capabilities, the barriers you can actually expect, what are the barriers? And when it comes to the global economy, where are we and how are we progressing? Before we really move on, may I request Mr. Rajiv Bajaj to please come on the stage. Mr. Rajiv Bajaj is a man who's known to move from scooters to Pulsar, the man behind the turnaround story of Bajaj. So may I request all of you to please join your hands together and welcome Mr. Rajiv Bajaj, Managing Director, Bajaj Auto. And he is going to talk about what's the importance of Make in India. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts or some of the experiences of Bajaj Auto with you. Special thanks to you, Wilfred, for inviting me. But more than that, for what you said this morning, because throughout your address, I heard that whenever you spoke about India, you used three words. You said we, you said us, and you said ours. You made me feel as if you are more proud to be Indian than most Indians. Thank you very much for that. I am dressed as I am because you don't make a lot of money making motorcycles in India. But more seriously, this is my company uniform, so I better clarify that. Friends, I heard many references to strategy this morning. Let me start with a strategic mantra that is often espoused. It is called less is more. Often I have heard people say in the context of strategy, less is more. Often when I have spoken with my colleagues, I tell them, less is more. But for a long time, I did not know what does this mean, less is more. But still, I used to say less is more. Then I read an article by one of my two favorite marketing gurus, Al Ries. And I understood a little bit about less is more when he wrote about narrow your focus. He articulated strategy as the narrowing of focus. And he went on to describe in that article how in difficult times, instead of trying to do more, probably companies should seek to do less, to focus, to sharpen their focus. So I began to understand what less is more means. It means narrow your focus. An even more specific articulation that I think is apt to share today, I think comes from Professor Potter himself. And if I am quoting him right, this is what I read him to say. He said, the presence of strategy in a company is best indicated by what it decides not to do. Because he who decides to do everything will be the inevitable jack of all trades. And therefore, this session is about the importance of Make in India, but I have taken the liberty of calling it Make of Importance in India. Because life is too short to become a sweatshop. We don't want to become the next sweatshop of the world. We would like to make things that make money. This was relevant to Bajaj because 20 years back, or actually as recently as 12 years back, we made almost every conceivable kind of two-wheeler. And then we decided one day to make motorcycles, i.e., not to make all the other kinds of two-wheelers. This was led by an observation that we were, till about 12 years back, a 100% domestic player. Everything that we made, 99% of it was sold only in India. But we wanted to be a global player because we thought that the only way to, at the end, demonstrate your excellence is to validate it on a global platform. And this thought process led to the observation that those who want to do well on a global scale had better do less, better narrow their focus, and do one thing really, really well if they were to have half a chance of succeeding, as Professor said, in a world that has become so hyper-competitive. So we wanted to go from being a local to a global player. And in 12 years, by executing this strategy in a fashion that I will try and share with you over the next few slides, I can tell you today, half of what we make is indeed exported. It is exported to the US, it is exported to Europe, it is exported to Japan, across Asia, Africa, and LATAM. And yes, we are very proud of the fact that it is all made in India. And we are very proud of the fact that almost without exception, in all the markets that we participate in, we are either number one or number two in that market, which is so very important if you have to not just make, but make money also in the process. When we started out, did we predict that success would come almost so quickly? No, we had no idea. We did not predict this internally, and that's because predictions are always fraught with error, as I will try and share with you in the next slide. The next one, please. Something is wrong with our predictions. I now share with you two of my favorite slides that I show everyone everywhere I go. So if you've heard me before, you know this better than me. Al Ries, that I referred to, put out this statistic in his book called The Origin of Brands in 2004. It's data that comes from a survey done by Nielsen and Ernst & Young. And effectively what it says is, as managers, we get it wrong 95% of the time. So it doesn't matter whether you are in India or in China, 90 to 95% of products and services fail. Now, as I always ask people to reflect, would you send your children to a school where 90% of the kids failed? No. Would you fly an airline that was not on time 90% of the time? No. Then what gives us managers the right to be wrong 90% of the time? Now you might think, and this often happens, at this point about half the room does not believe this because it comes from a consultant, and consultants are often notorious for bending things the way they want to bend them. So I take you on to the next slide, to the Mecca of management, the Harvard Business School. I love this slide because my whole family went to Harvard Business School with the only exception of me. So my father, his brothers, my brother, even my brother-in-law, I think he was told he cannot get married to my sister unless he goes to Harvard Business School. If you read the Harvard Business Review, April 2011, as I did, this is what it says in an article in that issue. And I hope you would agree with me that this information is not very different from what I showed you on the previous slide. It just seems to suggest that success comes not 5% of the time, but perhaps 25% of the time. And real success actually comes only 3% of the time. Is this how we are going to make in India? To be successful 3 or 5 or 10% of the time? I don't think so. My angst, next please. My angst with information like this is all over this slide. I'm an engineer. I finished my master's in 1990. And then since I was being groomed for a management job, although I never went to business school or management school, but I did try and learn some management along the way. 1990, when I came back to work for Bajaj Auto, the Toyota production system was very popular then. It was very fashionable then. So I also read the book on TPS, as it was called. I'm sure many of you did as well, by Shigeo Shingo. But before I could get a full understanding of it, because TPS came out of Japan, the US had to respond with something. So MIT produced lean. Lean manufacturing came out of the US. And I thought to myself, TPS is passé. Now I got to learn about lean. So for a while I read up on lean and I studied lean. But then there were other theories being floated. There was something called world-class manufacturing, there was core competence, quality function deployment, so on and so forth. Then just-in-time became very big, at least in India. Maybe it was there elsewhere before, but JIT became very popular, again coming out of Japan. And again, there was a counter from the other side because Motorola came up with Six Sigma. By this time, I was quite confused. TQM, TPM, TPS, Six Sigma, JIT, lean manufacturing. It seemed to me that there was a sinister management plot to keep me a perpetual student all my life. And the problem was that before I had learned something, I had to quickly unlearn it and learn something else, and unlearn it and learn something else. And I thought this had something to do with the fact that we fail as often as we fail, because we never really climb the ladder from one rung to the last one. We seem to be climbing up a bit, jumping down, climbing up another ladder, jumping down, and so on and so forth, a little like a monkey in a circus. Try this in the break. Everybody is anyway using their smartphone right now, so you can go ahead and try it right now. Google the first law of motion, and it will come up. And you can do it 50 years later, and the first law of motion, i.e. in physics, remains the same. Google the second law of entropy, as in chemistry. It will come up, and it hasn't changed in 100 years. Now Google the first or second or third law of management, and your screen will go blank, because it doesn't exist. Because management is not a science. Unfortunately, management is hindsight, management is anecdote, management is luck by chance, and that is why we succeed only 5% of the time. I share with you now, with no offense intended to anyone. Just a moment, don't start yet. There's a last word on that slide, it's called disruption. I have never met the gentleman, but a very, very senior professor, I believe, a tenured professor at Harvard Business School called Professor Clayton Christensen. I'm sure you've heard of him. He's best known for the wonderful book, The Innovator's Dilemma. He would, I think, this is what I felt after seeing this video, like us to believe that a lot of this stuff is not really as significant or relevant as we thought it is. There is a new theory called disruption, and now we should all unlearn everything and kind of learn up on disruption. So why is it that companies fail? What role does management science play, if there is science in management? And what is disruption? I have a 30-second video to share with you. The video, please. Please put the volume up really high.
Why is success so difficult to sustain? If you look across the sweep of business history, most companies which at one point were widely regarded as unassailably successful, a decade or two later you find them in the middle of the pack and often at the bottom of the heap. And I reached the strangest conclusion after having studied this for a number of years, which is that it's actually the principles of good management that we teach at the Harvard Business School that sow the seeds of every company's ultimate failure.
It is the principles of good management we teach at the Harvard Business School that sow the seeds of every company's ultimate failure. This is what he says. So I decided to define strategy in my own way, as someone said over there, in a simple way. Because I read somewhere, somebody said, never trust an idea that you cannot illustrate with a crayon. It must be as simple as that, so that everybody across the organization can understand it. You don't need to have an IQ of 150 to get it. So as I tell people, everyone from the chairman to the watchman must get it. And believe me, sometimes the chairman is a bigger challenge than the watchman. I call this my soda can strategy. Next, please. This is our strategy at Bajaj Auto. On the top left is a can of Coke, because Coke is the market leader. In my case, someone else that was making a 100cc motorcycle, i.e. Hero Honda, was the leader. So they were the Coke of the motorcycle industry, not us. The strategy or the strategic choices available before us are fundamentally true when we try to make something profitable. One, to make something like the leader. So Bajaj should have made its own Coke as well. I call this the strategy of familiarity, and I don't believe in this strategy because I believe that familiarity only breeds contempt, as our teachers taught us in school. The other strategy is the strategy of differentiation. Make everything except what the leader makes. I believe in this strategy because I believe that only novelty breeds desire and curiosity. If you've read Asimov, you will remember him to write about the origin of the universe. He said, perhaps at the beginning, there was curiosity. So making something important is about arousing curiosity. There are three ways one can do that. On the top right, we can make our own Coke but make it different. I make a Pepsi that is sweeter or Thumbs Up that is stronger. This is one way to make something different. We produced a brand called the Discover, which was in the same space as our competition, but not the same, it was different. On the bottom left, we have another choice. Make something so different that it becomes the opposite. Don't make a Coke which is black, make a 7-Up which is transparent. Make the opposite of the leader. If something is high mileage, make a powerful motorcycle instead. That is what we did with the Pulsar. The thought was as simple as that. And on the bottom right, make it so different, so different, so different, that it's almost incomparable. It's in a space of its own. It's a niche. For example, Red Bull. Often marketeers hesitate to make such a decision because everybody wants to have volumes and nobody wants to be in the niche. But consider this, it doesn't matter whether you're making Chetak or a Maruti or Coke or whatever. Everything starts from a niche. So I often say this to my colleagues, if you want to market volumes, market from a niche. If you start from a niche, you will eventually not only be profitable, but you will have volumes as well, as demonstrated by Red Bull. So it's so different that it's almost not a soda, but it is drunk like a soda. And this, I think, is the bedrock of our strategy, which helps us to make of importance in India, because in the last 12 years that we did this, we've been successful in going across the world, as I said, in selling across countries, across continents, and doing it profitably, making us number one or number two in each of those countries, and making us for the last 5 years the most profitable auto company in the world, not only in India. So that has been the power of this strategy. The issue with this is, how do you make something subjective objective? Because a practicing manager like me has to still say something to his R&D, to his engineering, to his purchase department. If you want to make a Pepsi that is sweeter than Coke, how much sweeter? Sweeter is only subjective. And if we cannot make it objective, if we cannot quantify it, then there is a chance that what one person says and what the other person hears is not the same. So from the soda can, I share with you our secret sauce. Next slide, please. This actually comes from my study of the science of homeopathy. But very simply put, it means this. Let's say we are competing on a particular attribute. In the world of soda, it might be sweetness or taste. In the world of motorcycles or automobiles, it may be, let us say, fuel economy. If somebody were to improve his fuel economy by less than 10% or make the Coke sweeter by less than 10%, all that I have studied shows that the consumer cannot feel it. The engineer thinks he has done a damn good job. Somebody in State Bank may think, I have started processing something 5% faster. What is wrong with these consumers? They don't appreciate it. The average human being cannot perceive a difference if it is under 10%. If the improvement is 10 to 20%, people begin to perceive it, but they only appreciate it of the leader. I have a very old friend and one of my senior-most dealers, Mr. Lakhotia here from the Northeast. And we would often have this debate that if Hero Honda improves mileage by 15%, the entire market applauds. If Bajaj improves it by 15%, nobody applauds. This is not fair. And then I realized, after making lots of mistakes, that making things better is a defense strategy that is only the prerogative of the leader. It never works for the challenger. It is a strategy of customer satisfaction. It is not a strategy of customer acquisition. So if you want to make in India, which means you need customers in India, and you need a strategy for that, the defense strategy is not for you if you are not the leader. The strategy for the challenger starts when he can make it sweeter or more fuel efficient by between 20 to 33%. No coincidence that our Discover was 125 cc versus somebody else's 100 cc. 25% more power brought us customers and helped us to make in India. If the improvement is 33 to 50%, it is so different that it is the opposite, i.e., our Pulsar started as a 150cc motorcycle. When it is almost the opposite, you are bound to create your own category, develop your own customers who give you pricing power, who don't compare you with the leader, who don't ask for discounts, who don't need the advertising support, and that's how you make more money. And finally, as we did with our acquisition of a company called KTM, a motorcycle company based out of Austria, if you make it so different that it is niche, i.e. an off-road racing motorcycle, then you are in a league of your own anyway, like Harley-Davidson in the US, or like Royal Enfield has done so remarkably in India. I won't bother with the last two because they are not relevant to today's context. So this is how we actually took a subjective idea and made it objective. Next slide. I'm almost done. Just for those of you who are active or semi-active in the stock market, which probably means everybody in this room, this appeared in the Times of India on 9th of September after the Chinese crash and then the Sensex falling below 25%. And I read you two lines from this. Because the news was put out like this, that the Sensex has almost hit the bear category. Ending below the psychologically important 25,000 mark, the Indian market is now just 3.5% shy of bear market territory. In market parlance, a slide of 20% from a high takes the index into bear territory. So I found this when I was preparing for this talk, how deeply rooted a number like 20%, 33%, 50% is in human psychology, that even in the stock market, apparently, If it moves by 5%, nobody cares, I mean, by and large. 15% is worse, and 20% is when it becomes different, and people start saying, "Ab bull ka bear ban gaya hai," that kind of thing. So it seemed to be validated in this article. Last slide, please. So to make successful in India, this is what I would like to say. Ignore the buzzwords, ignore the slogans, ignore the press and the pundits, which means all the media and the advertising agencies and all that. Just ignore everyone. Believe in somebody who's done it, who's demonstrated it, such as the legendary Sir Alec Isigonis, a doyen of the British car industry, who said, "Fashion dates, but logic is timeless." If we approach Make in India logically, whether it is to decide where to put infrastructure or where to move labor, we will all successfully make in India. I wish you all the very best for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that actually echoes with what you spoke about. Thank you so much, Mr. Bajaj. I may request if you can just come, and may request Mr. Anurag Batra, Editor-in-Chief, Business World, please come, and let's have a quick question-answer round.
Good morning. Rajiv, that was a fantastic session, a real one, coming from the gut, knowing a little bit about you, not in first hand. It was something that you believe in. So please give Rajiv a bigger round of applause. The Finance Minister has not yet taxed clapping, so you can clap. Our Prime Minister is in Silicon Valley, and when he became the Prime Minister, Rajiv, he told all the honeymooning couples, he said, he banned them to go abroad. He said, "You cannot go abroad." He told them, "Make in India." So what
Easy for him to say, he's not married.
Yeah, I know. Rajiv, when you started your address, you said, you're wearing a T-shirt because you run a very profitable automobile company and you can't afford to wear a suit. By that definition, if I followed your definition, I'd be here without clothes. I run a media company. But I guess what he was saying was joking. So come on, actually some of your thoughts and my thoughts match. You talked about one using gut feel to arrive at strategy, seeing strategies that have worked elsewhere, maybe not necessarily in the same industry. And second is experimenting in some way. I'm not talking of failure, but what do you think of Indian government strategies just now on Make in India? You talked of opposite, niche, different, better. Where is it?
So this is what I think. I think, and I said, if you were there at the Siam convention earlier this month, I shared some thoughts in this regard. That at the end of the day, I'm not, if I may say so, somebody who works on the system. I'm a manager whose job is to work in the system. Whether I like it or not, I have to perform, I have to deliver every day or every quarter. So from my point of view, in that context, I don't think of countries as competing. I mean, does India compete with Japan? I'm not sure. I know for sure I compete with Honda. And from my point of view, companies compete, individuals compete. I mean, all the success we achieved, which we are very proud of, was achieved by putting together in R&D in engineering a bunch of 5 kids who were all of like 27, 28 at that time. So the question really is, who is making in India or who is competing? I don't think of organizations or countries as competing. I think people compete. And as someone said, everything is created twice. See, Make in India is a thought, or it's an idea, or it's a slogan. Everything is created twice. Once in the mind and once in reality. Now it's fine. Mr. Modi has said Make in India. It is a thought in his mind. That is the 1% inspiration. But the 99% perspiration has to come from us. So I never think about the government or the Prime Minister or the Finance Minister in the context of Make in India and whether the government is doing right or wrong. I think about Bajaj Auto, I think about myself, I think about my team. Because I think if we all make in India, then the government will make in India. It is not the other way.
Fantastic.
It is not that first the government will make in India and then we will make in India. ऐसा थोड़ी ना होता है. So this is what I feel.
Fantastic. That's a very real answer. Rajiv, you're very original, right? All of us are original in some way, but you're very original. The reason I say that is I've interacted with your dad, and as you said, Sometimes the challenge is the chairman, and if the chairman is your dad, then it's like a double challenge, right? So you pretty much in the last 12 years stood your ground and delivered, if I may say. Who do you look for inspiration? Where does your inspiration come from? You haven't gone to the Harvard Business School, you haven't gone to MDI, so where does your inspiration on a serious note come from?
Broadly from, I would say, two places. One is, of course, the people I work with, because I believe that you learn by doing. And I was very, very fortunate to find a good team very young. In those days, we were so young, and obviously, we had no track record. When you start, you never have a track record. It doesn't matter who you are. So my father used to say, "Ye to tumhare chamche hain." That's what he used to say, because we were just too young for the job that time. But that's okay. So I think I was lucky, and I realized that it was not only my good fortune. Having spent a year at Tata Motors as a trainee engineer and then started work at Bajaj Auto, I thought, I'm very lucky that I found some good engineers in Bajaj Auto. But then I found everywhere in India there are good engineers. It's not only at Bajaj Auto. So I think I would like to believe I'm very fortunate to be born in this country at the right time. There's so much talent, and I have learned from all of them. That is one. And second, quite frankly, in my pursuit of understanding things at a deeper level and looking for answers that stand the test of time, because in my opinion, something is scientific only if it is capable of producing repeatable results. Sustainable results. And I did not find this with management theories, with most of them. So I found my way to two gurus, if I may say so. One who is largely considered the greatest homeopath in the world, a Dr. Rajan Sankaran out of Juhu in Mumbai. So I've been studying homeopathy since 2002. And it's a wonderful science, because if you can trust it to heal yourself, you can certainly trust it with the wellness of your organization. And the second, because I live in Pune, I lived only 20 minutes away from the one and only Yogacharya Guruji B.K.S. Iyengar, who unfortunately passed away last year. So I'm a student of yoga, I'm a student of Guruji. And through his teachings and his aphorisms and his sutras on yoga, and what is yoga and how one goes about it to produce better wellness in oneself, I learned a lot from yoga. So actually all my management comes from homeopathy and yoga, actually.
No wonder you told. Very good. There's a proud Indian. No wonder you told Wilford that, you believe that sometimes Indians are less proud of being Indians or the accomplishments. Now, last two questions, quick ones. Now, you built a profitable company. Today, you're launching a four-wheeler, so to say, right? What is the future of mobility? What is the future of transportation? Today, the sharing economy is really changing the way we live our lives. And we are not thinking of the time when there will be driverless cars. We are not thinking of the impact on society. So do you think about the issues of urban transport in terms of quality of life and finding solutions to them, and hence creating a business?
Very good question. There are a lot of theories again about the future of mobility. And if you read about them over the last 5 decades, you will see the theories change every now and then. Because as I shared with you earlier, predictions are usually not worth the paper they are written on. So I would not like to predict the future. Although I can say very clever things about electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, hydrogen-powered vehicles, and blah, blah, blah. I think what is important is a quote of Darwin, of Charles Darwin. And I'm sure you're all familiar with it, but I will say it anyway. He said, "It is not the strongest nor the most intelligent of the species that survives, but the ones who are most adaptive to change." So all we need to do is to have the confidence that we can adapt, because change is inevitable, we all know that. Now we have two choices. Either we try to predict the change. This is a very, in yogic terms, this is a very egoistic process of thinking, कि मैं जानता हूँ कल क्या होने वाला है. I think this doesn't work. The more humble way to approach it would be, I will prepare myself.
I'll be receptive.
I will be flexible, I will be listening, I will be observing, and I will prepare myself and build in myself the capability to adapt to the future. So I talked about homeopathy. All of homeopathy, quickly, I will say this, rests on three fundamental principles. First, the principle of individualization. As you said, we are all individuals. So each patient and each company and each country is unique and must take that into account when it charts its course. Two, holism. Look at anything holistically. If you look at anything one-dimensionally, it doesn't work. So in Dr. Kent, a great homeopath, said, stool needs 3 legs to be stable. So when we analyze a situation, we will look at it from at least 3 points of view to make sure we've got it covered. And finally, the third principle after individualization and holism in homeopathy is vitality. That means our strength, our energy, our life force, our immunity does not come from outside by using a crutch. It comes from inside by exercising mind and body to be stronger. Because at the end of the day, by breathing the same air, only some of us get swine flu. Not everybody bitten by the mosquito gets dengue. The difference is the person who does, in my opinion, his homeopathy and yoga is so strong from within that the mosquito doesn't affect him. The one who is inherently predisposed and weak is the one that suffers.
Fantastic. Mr. Michael Enright said something, and one thing I didn't agree. Does India need a Hong Kong? Does India really need a Hong Kong? I mean,
Sir, I don't know. That is a very big subject. But I can only say this, that in business, we can simplistically say that 2 things are important. One is excellence and one is scale. And what is most important is not to put scale before excellence. First, we must create excellence, like Indigo did with its airlines. Take one thought and do it really well. Then you scale up the excellence. So if Hong Kong is to be interpreted as an example of excellence that then becomes a beacon or a lighthouse for all of China to emulate appropriately, then I think even India needs that. Because somewhere we have to all look for inspiration, for benchmark, for direction, for guidance. So let's take it positively like that.
Fantastic. So I would say, Dr. Rajiv Bajaj, you're a professor in the making. You have your own theory. We should recommend to a university to give you an honorary doctorate. We can take some questions. But I only want to say, when I grow up, I want to be like Rajiv Bajaj for various reasons. But we'll take questions. So, Twitter-like questions, otherwise I'll be a rude Punjabi, okay? Mike there.
Sir, thank you for a very inspiring session on strategy. Coming from a practicing manager like you, it's been really very, very insightful.
Sir, if you hold it like this, we can hear.
I'm saying thank you very much for a very insightful session on strategy. You are a very admired company. We love your company. I'm an analyst. I write strategy. I work for ICICI Securities. A very profitable company. We like the way you do business. Exports has been really giving you a lot of benefits.
Your question.
The question is, in 2009, you decided to exit the scooter business. And 2015, you wanted to come back. What made you to exit then? What making you to come back now? Thank you.
So the answer is very simple. We exited, in fact, before 2009, because as I explained, we decided to go from being a local player or a domestic player to a global player. So very often, people say to me, here's the guy who went from scooters to motorcycles. And I tell them, I'm not that guy. I'm the guy that went from India to the world. In the process, I had to consider that if Sachin Tendulkar wants to play only within India, he can probably play 5 sports. He's that talented. Or Mahendra Singh Dhoni. But if he wants to be the best in the world, he has to give up everything else. He might love football, but he can't afford to spend time playing football. He has to only do cricket. And now there is even an argument that he must do only one day cricket. In other words, I think the very simple articulation of the word strategy is specialization. See, today for every part of your body, there is a different doctor. But businessmen behave as if they can treat the entire body. Business is business. You can do anything you want. The so-called salt to software conglomerates of the world, frankly, I don't understand them. I think they survive in less developed markets. So I thought that strategy is specialization. And specialization means sacrifice. So I must sacrifice everything and do one thing well. So that is the answer to the first part of the question. The thing about why are we coming back into scooters? We are not coming back into scooters. Like some gentleman is here from the Mint. All these newspaper fellows and 24/7 TV channels, since they have to keep producing breaking news, they keep putting out this news, and they have got a birthright and a license to do it. It is called sources. They quote sources and they put out whatever they want to put out. So I am not making scooters, and I will not do that till Bajaj Auto becomes the best motorcycle manufacturer in the world, which we have not become so far. So we must do one thing right, be the best in that, because I think if we have to make scooters, we have to earn the right to make scooters. And for that, we must first be number one in the world in something else.
In fact, Rajiv has famously said that they'd rather be like a Harley Davidson, do one thing and be super profitable, and not be like a general. That's a different story. So we could go on chatting with Rajiv Bajaj, but I think we have another exciting set. One more question, okay. Yeah. Dr. Kapoor. Yes, where?
Mr. Bajaj, good morning. My name is Sangeeta Robinson. I'm a CSR and sustainability consultant. So my question is a sustainability question. Automobiles sector has one of the most extensive supply chains. Would you tell us how Bajaj is integrating sustainability into its supply chain?
At every level, I mean, we essentially do two things. We make a product and we go to market with it. So we must look at all aspects, be it design, be it the manufacturing process, be it servicing, etc. And there are, as you can imagine, so many points there where one can contribute towards sustainability, at least in the more practical sense of pollution and consumption and stuff like that. The other is wherever we are present in markets, we would like to believe that we try and contribute in a way that is not just relevant to society, but also meaningful to the company. So for example, since we are an engineering company, a particular favorite of mine is supporting the ITIs and other such relatively lower class engineering institutes to develop the engineers who will skill India tomorrow to make in India tomorrow. So that's like, because we are running out of time, I think just a very brief answer to your question.
Thank you. Please give Rajiv a big round of applause. And I think some of you who didn't go to a business school don't need to spend your money going to a business school. I think you should spend more time with Rajiv. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Anurag. Thank you, Rajiv, for this amazingly insightful session. Thanks a lot for joining.